All right, I think we're live. Well, hey, my name is Michael Jenks, and on behalf of STAHL Consulting and STAHL Channel Partners, I would like to say, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity for allowing us to share our experience with operationalizing MITRE ATT&CK over the past 8 years. We hope that this presentation is informative and will encourage others to applying a threat-centric approach to their computer network defense operations. So with that, let's just jump in. So again, this is operationalizing MITRE ATT&CK, our story. A little bit of background on myself. So I've been doing InfoSec for quite a while, 22 years in the industry, 15 of those focused primarily on offensive and defensive cyber operations. I am the co-founder of ATT&CK, a cybersecurity services company supporting multiple government agencies, and also Room 40 Labs, an enterprise security optimization software solution that really automates a lot of what we're doing. So awesome. So I thought it would be good to give a little bit of background, a little bit of an origin story first, jump into some case studies that had some pretty remarkable results, and then we'll get into the methodology. So where did all this come from? So back in 2012, we were supporting a government customer, and this particular government customer offered cybersecurity service provider services to other government agencies, etc. So to become an authorized and accredited cybersecurity service provider, they have to go through an accreditation. So auditors come in, they do the paperwork drill, check processes, procedures. We pass with 100%, no problem on that component. But new to that year, they added a secondary assessment to really validate, that the operation and the capabilities. So with that, we were blindly assessed by an NSA certified red team. So the red team compromised the environment and went undetected. Made a little bit more noise, still undetected. Seemingly, screaming from the rooftops, "Find me, find me, find me," and unfortunately, no detection. So at the end of the day, handed us a report and said, "Hey guys, here's our results, and you need to fix this." So talk about putting your pride in check, right? So ultimately, it was my job to fix it. So first call, was to industry partners, the vendors of the world, saying, "Hey, why didn't you guys detect this activity?" And they said, "Oh yeah, no worries. On our next release, we'll take care of you." So that was concerning. But looking at the report, the debrief from the red team, you recognize that a lot of the ways that these advanced adversaries move, right, is not inherently malicious, right? They're living off the land, they're blending in to the environment. So at that point, recognize that, man, I can't depend on industry, right? I can't depend on the cybersecurity vendors to take care of this stuff. I don't even really know what I'm protected against, what I'm not. We're gonna have to figure this out ourselves. So we developed a purple team, purple methodology, and we started building out something like MITRE ATT&CK. This is 2012-ish timeframe. But then around 2013, we came across a pre-release copy of MITRE ATT&CK and said, "Man, that is exactly what we're trying to build." Immediately adopted it and built a methodology around it, blending offensive and defensive skill sets to assess all of the different products in the environment and understand, no kidding, what we could detect, what we couldn't. And that drove all sorts of benefits as far as informed procurement, optimized storage strategies, rapid incident response, etc. So to be accredited, that we passed the accreditation, no problem. Obviously there were some bumps there in the original one, but they have to be accredited every 3 years, cybersecurity service providers. So the team came back 2015. after we've implemented this methodology for a few years, and 2015, we detected the NSA red team within the first hour of compromise. And what was even better is we were able to capture one of their binaries, reverse engineer it, derived a whole bunch of other indicators of compromise that we could use to surge across the network. And man, we just decimated, multiple campaigns that they had running, and it was just very validating and refreshing. So that was fantastic. And then in 2008 or 2018, they came back, and this time they did a little secret handshake, high five, deal with another red team that had compromised an adjacent agency that they could pivot from into the environment that we were defending, but we caught them pivoting into our environment. So much so that the red team director called me up and he said, man, that was amazing. Hats off to y'all. But, could you pretend that you didn't see us? Because we just spent like 8 months developing this campaign, and that's a lot of time and money. So, man, just very validating. This methodology works. And, not only red teams, but, various APT detected over the years. Very, very good stuff. Also wanted to show you a few other case studies. So throughout the years, we've gotten very familiar with products, different cybersecurity vendor tools. And one particular vendor, they were short on professional services staff, and they said, "Hey, we know that you guys really know our products, man. Would you come into one of our other customer environments and do some services work?" We said, "Sure." So this was a very large federal enterprise customer, and they procured this tool and they plugged it in, and it probably just sat there. So you have to. These things are Cadillacs. A lot of these things. So you really need to understand how to tune them, configure them, et cetera, to take full advantage of the capabilities. So logging into the sensors for the first time. This thing was firing 30,000 alerts over a 24-hour period. Obviously, that is, you can't do anything with that. There's just too much noise. So what we were able to come in and do was really tune that detection capability down to focus on MITRE ATT&CK threat-centric techniques for the environment. And then we're able to tune that down to 120 actionable alerts over a 24-hour period. And what we were able to do then was also introduce our own custom cyber hunt logic that we've proven over the years to crawl that metadata that the device was collecting, and immediately latched on to some previously undetected activity that just blended in with the noise. So that was a huge win. Another case study. So we were assisting a commercial MDR, so a managed detection and response capability. So you could think of something like Arctic Wolf or Red Canary, et cetera. Basically, it's the equivalent of a commercial cybersecurity service provider. So we came in and consulted their operation, and same type of situation where we came in, their sensors were just overloading. They couldn't really latch on to anything. It was just too much noise. And we also had our proven hunt logic that we were able to introduce. And this tweet sums it up nicely for this case study. Whereas I removed the actual person, didn't want to get their permission, but they said, "I know I'm preaching to the SOC IR choir here, but if you're relying purely on alerts from tools that you've purchased or your SIM Ben canned rules, you're missing a lot of evil." Man, could not agree anymore. So we came in, we tuned the environment, really focused on that MITRE ATT&CK centric approach. So within the first week, after the tuning and introducing our hunt logic, we latched onto a TrickBot infection that was previously undetected that was just about ready to ransom the entire environment. About a week later, another customer, what we were able to detect was, I don't even know how this happens, honestly, but the customer plugged in a system that was essentially in front of their firewall. So it was open to the internet, had a bunch of vulnerabilities on it, was immediately picked up by a Russian scanner and exploited for a turn blue. The exploit ran over Windows Defender, but our custom hunt logic that we introduced into this environment and the tool sets lit up like a Christmas tree. We're able to immediately identify that activity and isolate that host because it was starting to scan laterally the environment to pivot. And we were able to really quarantine that down to that one host and saved a lot of pain for that customer. Another commercial MDR. So, man, again, it's just this overload. So there's so much noise, the signal to noise, and really not focusing on the telemetry and detections that matter can just overload your environment and your operation. So this particular MDR, we consulted with, they had 12 analysts. That was 24/7 operation. They just couldn't keep up with the alerts. We came in, we did our methodology to really tune that environment, focus, prioritize, and ultimately what we reduced the workload down. Now that same operation, they can perform that same workload as far as endpoints in the environment with 3 analysts. So they're able to expand their presence, their operation to more customers with less people, which was very valuable to them. We also help organizations understand workforce and cyber tool competency, or we're able to spot, let's say, triage time, triage efficiency, to where maybe an analyst is really great at triaging network-based alerts, but man, he just struggles at triaging host-based alerts. So being able to spot those inefficiencies within the people, but also the tools, allows organizations to prescribe proper training to bolster workforce knowledge gaps and really tune out the noise from a detection capability perspective. And I believe this is the last case study, but really what we want to highlight here is, so we were doing all of this purple teaming methodology and really assessing a ton of different cyber vendors with their capability to detect techniques on MITRE ATT&CK. So what we found, and really you can see this also in the MITRE ATT&CK evals, we're looking at particular EDR products and we were assessing it, and what we're communicating with the attack matrix here is the techniques that are shaded in green is what the default canned detection alerting of that tool would alert on. The techniques that are outlined in green is what it actually was able to detect with all of the metadata, all of the telemetry that was present and it was collecting. So, a lot of these vendors, God bless them. What they do at scale is literally, magic, right? It's amazing. But you have to also understand that they have to develop these rule sets and these detection sets essentially in the broadest sense possible, right? And just collect everything. And they just can't alert on everything because, again, they already have a noise problem. So just understanding that, a lot of these tools, a lot of detection capability, you probably have everything you need already. All of the tools that you have probably are adequate. It's really just tuning them, introducing the right detection logic into that environment, and really just understanding your threat coverage and being informed so you can make the right decisions for your organization's specific needs. So, just getting into, man, why do all of this, right? And bottom line, and this is true from the dawn of the internet, right? To where enterprises just can't seem to adequately detect and respond to advanced adversarial TTPs. You see this time and time again, and it's becoming more prevalent. I mean, you have the OPM, the Marriott, the Equifax, you have SolarWinds this year, and ultimately it's why, right? I honestly believe because they're focusing in the wrong areas. They're trying to boil the ocean, whereas you just need specific targeted detection capabilities that are specific to your enterprise environment. That really is how you win, and just understanding everything about your specific environment. So also just misunderstanding the detection coverage and detection telemetry relationships can effectively measure capabilities of cyber products and workforce. Definitely not focusing on this MITRE attack centric, advanced adversarial technique approach. Just don't understand where the gaps are, or they're focusing on the wrong telemetry. Reliance on the canned vendor logic, which we spoke to earlier. And this stuff happens fast. So the ability to rapidly detect and respond to advanced adversarial threats in the operating window. I mean, gone in 60 seconds. Most of these adversaries have click scripts where they land on the box. That's a click script away from scanning, moving laterally, etc., and you'll never find them, right? Or it'll be very difficult to find them. I mean, this really gets down to it's just a constant wave of industry solutions, whereas the new hotness is XDR and SOAR, which all of these things are great, but until you solve the root problem of focusing, right, and understanding your environment, focusing on the telemetry that matters, understanding your exact environment and the exact needs, well, at that point you're just automating noise. So all of that is fantastic, but you need to organize and understand your specific environment first before you can really bear the fruits of these automation and tools. And again, tool overload, vendor security lottery is like what I like to say. Man, most organizations just procure solutions, cross their fingers, and hope that magically solves their problem. But as we can see, over the years, that's just simply not the case. So lessons learned. Did want to touch on this. Over the years, we've had a bunch of lessons learned because there's definitely some pitfalls that you can run into when operationalizing attack. Actually, Red Canary posted a blog and they highlighted a bunch of these, and I didn't want to recreate it because they're spot on. So first off, don't assume all techniques are equal, right? So our methodology allows organizations to focus on techniques and telemetry that matter for their specific environment, prioritizing based on techniques that are currently being observed in the wild, the head of attack chains, and where you could implement the best bang for your buck mitigations. Don't try building alerts for every technique. Focus on providing high fidelity detections for techniques that adversaries can use in your specific environment while leveraging less predominant telemetry to provide enrichment for your analysts. And this gets into how we allow you to focus on telemetry that matters while leveraging cost-efficient storage strategies, leaving less specific telemetry on sensor or in warm, cheap storage options. Don't misunderstand your coverage, right? Be aware that even though you have a detection coverage for a specific technique, that doesn't necessarily mean you have coverage for every possible attack through that technique. For instance, there may be an unknown adversarial technique that no one discovered yet, or an unknown way of using an existing technique. The matrix is not all encompassing, unfortunately, as new TTPs are being discovered all the time as adversaries adapt to new defensive capabilities put in place. Perpetual game of cat and mouse. But by partnering with Team STAHL and STAHL channel partners, right, we help mitigate this through our detection engineering services. And our detection engineers are constantly keeping up with the latest TTPs being used, creating detection logic, to combat the ever-changing landscape of the threats. And adapt forward, we've contributed 7 techniques and 3 software tool definitions to a MITRE attack. So we're constantly evolving ourselves as the adversaries evolve. I'd say the most important pitfall, though, is don't forget about the fundamentals. Leverage attack where it makes sense, but continue to implement security controls that are important to your organization. To illustrate this further, let's talk about attack chains, right, and mitigations, right? So we're doing a whole bunch of research around this concept of attack chains. And the idea is that from any given technique on the matrix, an adversary simply cannot pivot to any other technique, but instead a subset. So this not only provides higher fidelity detections and alertings, but also acts as an input for mitigation recommendations specific to your defended environment, right? So with mitigations, we enable an organization to identify attack chains that would be possible in their specific environment, and then prescribe the best bang for the buck mitigations recommendations by chopping off the head of attack chains, through these mitigations. But the main takeaway is not to become disproportionately focused on the impossible or the insignificant, but instead focus on what matters to your specific environment and needs. So methodology-wise, we look at it through a 4-phased approach, right? Baseline, optimize, measure, decide. So ultimately, we're turning attack into an enterprise TTP-based actionable threat coverage model. We quantify, prioritize, optimize advanced adversarial techniques, detections, telemetry coverage, mitigations, product configurations, detection rules, storage cost, etc. We prioritize detections, right, and telemetry coverage versus attack, looking at missing poorly written detection rules, missing misconfigured partial log sources, mitigations tailored to your specific environment. Ultimately, getting to a point where now you have a no kidding understanding of where you're covered, where you're not, and the ability to make informed decisions for your organization's specific needs. So diving down into the different phases of the approach a little bit more. So we'll come in and we're gonna purple team your entire environment, right? So we can get to a ground truth of what your organization, what your environment is able to detect, what it misses, identifying gaps when married up to MITRE ATT&CK and the SEN threat approach. We can also model any various threat groups that would be able to that are interested in your type of organizations or the data that you protect. We can also marry up MITRE ATT&CK coverage to other regulatory frameworks, like NIST 853, et cetera. So after we baseline an environment, right, now we're in the optimization phase where we're prioritizing gaps, mitigations. We're detecting, we're performing detection engineering for, because there's definitely cases where you have the telemetry required to detect a technique. You just don't have any detection logic to query against it. So they're easy wins where we can come in, create that detection logic, query against it, create that coverage, and shore these things up. We can also configure your tool sets, right, to focus on attack-centric alerting, which is really just focusing on that telemetry that matters, right, and reducing that alert set and just creating those efficiencies. And we're also, again, to implement our proven cyber hunt logic to maximize your current environment, your current products that already exist. Like I said before, most likely you already have everything you need to thoroughly protect your environment. It's just understanding the relationships between the telemetry detections and tools, understanding gaps and prioritizing them appropriately, and ultimately getting to the informed decision making. From a measurement perspective, right? From a measurement perspective, we're also looking at the performance. So, once we baseline, once we optimize, well, now we're in more of a sustainment mode where we're measuring all components of your environment, right? Where we're measuring the performance of the detections, telemetry, workforce, to just holistically understand enterprise efficiencies, whether that be, with the humans, whether that be with the tools, whether that be with the configurations, et cetera. We're also able to then start quantifying, right? Quantifying the cyber tools, the techniques, based IOCs, telemetry, to understand the value of each which acts as an input to the decide phase, which we'll get in a moment. And then we're also able to measure the value of telemetry to determine where it should be stored, right? Does it make sense to just, dump everything into Splunk or Elastic? I mean, I guess if you like, your $1 billion, indexing bill, but what we're able to do is identify, that telemetry that lends itself to detecting techniques outlined in MITRE that you obviously want to store centrally, you want to alert on immediately, but then also just understanding maybe which telemetry that really doesn't lend itself for that primary detection mechanism, and we can work with you to create optimized storage strategies that make sense for your organization. And then ultimately, decision phase. So, once we're, baselined it, we optimize, now we're measuring the things that matter in your organization. We unlock your ability to implement cost-efficient storage strategies, stack consolidation, spotting overlap, telemetry detection, et cetera. And we're starting to prioritize mitigations that will provide the best bang for your buck for your specific environment. Workforce cyber tool competency, allowing your organization to prescribe proper training to bolster workforce knowledge gaps and make informed cyber tool product procurement decisions based on your true needs. So instead of playing vendor security lottery, where I'm crossing my fingers and hoping, now I know, no kidding, where I'm covered, where I'm not, what I need. So, when, the new vendors come out and say, hey, we've got this new capability, you say, great, does it fill these gaps? Because these are my needs, right? If it doesn't, then I don't want to talk to you, right? And if it does, and I'm sure the answer is always going to be yes from the sales guy, right? You just say, okay, great. And then, we purple team it and validate that it's true, right? We've had to do that quite a few times. But ultimately, this all comes down to understanding your environment, arming you with the right information that you need to make the right decisions for your organization's specific needs. So, man, again, just want to say thank you. That was, hopefully informative. And then just on behalf of STAHL Consulting and STAHL Channel Partners, we're just super excited to be able to present our findings at the NRC Hack event. And if you have any follow-up questions or want to have conversations, et cetera, to get into more of the details, we're here to help. So again, thank you, and man, have a great 2021.